The smell of vanilla frosting and cheap party confetti still lingered in the air when I finally sat down. My legs ached, my back begged for rest, and yet my mind wouldn't slow down. Emily had just turned 18, and the house had been full of laughter, music, and that restless energy only young people seem to carry. For her, it was freedom, adulthood, new beginnings. For me, it was another reminder of how quickly time was moving, how distant I felt from it all. I sat at the kitchen island, watching the lights from the backyard flicker through the window, and I thought about how alone I'd felt in a house full of people. Emily's best friend Ava had stayed behind to help clean up. She was always thoughtful like that. I'd known her for years, seen her through awkward school phases and sleepovers and heartbreaks. But tonight felt different. She moved around my kitchen with ease, barefoot, her hair tied in a loose bun, that soft sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder. She looked at me differently, or maybe I was the one looking too closely. "I couldn't be sure. You okay, Miss Lauren?" she asked, breaking me from my thoughts. I glanced up and met her eyes. Something passed between us, quiet, quick, but I felt it. I nodded, maybe too quickly. "Just tired," I said, and forced a smile. She smiled back, that kind of smile that doesn't ask for anything but still gives you something. I looked away. Emily had gone upstairs hours ago, probably texting boys or girls or whoever she was into these days. I didn't ask much. I gave her space, trusted her. She'd earned it. But I hadn't expected Ava to still be here, carefully stacking plastic cups, wiping counters like this was her home too. I should have told her to go rest, but part of me didn't want the company to end. When I stood to gather the last of the dishes, my hand brushed hers. It was innocent, clumsy, but neither of us moved right away. My fingers were warm, hers cooler, soft. We looked at each other again, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. She blinked first, stepping back with a quiet laugh. "Sorry," she said. "Guess I'm clumsy." "It's okay," I replied too quickly, my voice too soft. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy in a way I didn't understand. Like something unsaid was stretching its arms between us. I told myself again that I was imagining it, that I was tired and vulnerable, and maybe just lonely. God, I was lonely. Later, after she said goodnight and disappeared into the guest room, I walked down the hallway and paused by the door. I don't know why. I could hear the quiet sound of her moving around, the bed creaking softly, a drawer opening. I stepped away quickly before I embarrassed myself. I was being ridiculous. Back in my room, I crawled into bed, still dressed in my jeans, and stared at the ceiling. My mind kept circling back to her. To her laugh. Her eyes. The way she looked at me like she saw past the mother, past the adult, and into the part of me that hadn't felt alive in so long. It scared me. It shouldn't have meant anything. But I couldn't ignore it that I didn't sleep much that night. When I closed my eyes, I saw her. And when I opened them, the ache in my chest reminded me that something inside me had shifted. I didn't know where this was going. I didn't want it to go anywhere. But deep down, I knew, it already had. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting thin lines of light across the kitchen floor. I stood barefoot, pouring coffee into a chipped mug I'd had since before the divorce. The house was quiet. Emily was still asleep, no surprise after the party, but I hadn't expected to see Ava walk in, hair damp from a shower, wearing an old t-shirt that must have belonged to Emily. She smiled sleepily, rubbing one eye. "Morning," she said, her voice soft and gravelly. "I didn't mean to wake you." I shook my head, pretending to be calm. "You didn't." "I've been up." I watched as she reached for a banana from the counter. There was a casualness about her, but also something more. Or maybe that was just me again, reading too much into everything. She peeled the banana slowly, leaned against the counter, and said, "Your place feels peaceful in the morning." "It's nice." We stood in a strange quiet for a few seconds, the kind that isn't uncomfortable but makes you aware of every breath. She looked at the fridge, then back at me. Do you ever get tired of doing it all alone? The question caught me off guard. I stared at her, coffee mug warm in my hands. What do you mean? She shrugged. Just, being the one everyone leans on. Doesn't it get heavy? I didn't know how to answer that. No one ever asked. Not like that. I exhaled slowly, watching the steam rise from my cup. Yeah. Sometimes. We started talking more, about nothing at first, college plans, bad high school teachers, the party cleanup, but the words began to flow easier than I expected. I found myself laughing. Not forced, not polite. Real laughter. Ava smiled like she'd been waiting to hear that sound from me. You should laugh more, she said. It suits you. And then she bit her lip, like maybe she hadn't meant to say that out loud. I tried to play it off. Well, maybe you should come around more to make me. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and we both froze a little at how that sounded. She turned to the sink, rinsing her hands. I reached over to grab the dish towel, and our hands brushed again, soft, electric. I pulled mine back quickly, pretending not to notice, but she didn't flinch. She just glanced at me with a quiet curiosity. Do you always pretend you don't feel things? She asked. I blinked. What? Ava smiled faintly, not repeating herself, just letting the question hang in the air like smoke. The rest of the day felt normal on the surface, but something had cracked open between us. I couldn't stop noticing her, how close she stood, how her laughter lingered longer than it should, how her gaze kept drifting toward me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I cleaned the living room while Emily was still in her room, and Ava helped, moving around me with too much grace for someone her age. There were little things, how she gently adjusted the blanket on the couch, how she handed me the remote and our fingers touched again. Each time, I felt it more. Not in a loud way. It was quiet. Dangerous. Growing. That night, Emily went upstairs early, headphones on, lost in her world. I was folding laundry when Ava came into the living room and sat across from me. She watched me silently for a minute, then asked, "Why did you stop painting?" I stared at her. How do you know I used to paint? She smiled. Emily showed me some of your old stuff. It's beautiful. My throat tightened. No one had talked about that part of me in years. I don't know, I said, shrugging. Life got in the way, I guess. She leaned forward, resting her arms on her knees. Maybe life isn't the thing in the way. Maybe you just forgot that you're allowed to want things for yourself. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Later, I turned out the lights and headed to bed, but I paused halfway down the hall. Ava's door was slightly open. I caught a glimpse of her curled on the bed, reading. She looked up and saw me. Our eyes met again. She didn't smile this time. She just watched me, quietly, calmly, like she was waiting. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came. I turned and walked to my room, shutting the door behind me with shaking hands. I couldn't deny it anymore. Something was happening. It wasn't just in my head. And whatever it was, I was starting to want it. The night felt unusually still. The kind of quiet that sinks into your skin and makes every sound louder, every movement feel more intentional. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch halfway through some movie she'd insisted we watch together. Her head rested against a cushion, one arm dangling off the side like a child too exhausted to make it to bed. I didn't wake her. She looked peaceful, and the truth was, I needed a moment to breathe. Ava sat beside her, legs tucked beneath her, a blanket thrown over both of them. She looked over at me, her face soft in the dim glow of the TV, her eyes shadowed but full of something unreadable. "She's out cold," she said, smiling gently. I nodded and reached for the remote, lowering the volume until it was just background noise. Ava glanced at Emily, then slowly eased out from under the blanket, careful not to wake her. She moved to the armchair across from me and sat down, pulling her knees up to her chest. For a while, we didn't say anything. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged, like something unsaid was pressing at the edges of the room. The kind of silence that asks questions without needing words. I sipped the last of my wine, my fingers cold around the glass, and finally asked, "You okay?" Ava looked up, her eyes locking onto mine. "Yeah. Just thinking." I tilted my head. "About what?" She hesitated, chewing her lip for a moment. "Do you ever feel like you're holding your breath around people? Like no one really sees you, and you just keep pretending everything's okay because that's easier than being honest?" I wasn't sure if she was talking about herself or me. Maybe both. I felt the knot in my chest tighten. "All the time," I admitted, my voice quieter than I intended. She looked relieved, like my honesty gave her permission to speak. "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere." "Not really. Like I'm always too much or not enough for the people around me." There was a tremble in her voice that made my throat ache. I wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but all I could manage was, "I know that feeling more than you think." Her eyes searched mine, and then she said it, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "I think I'm falling for someone." The room shifted. The air felt different. My heart stopped, then pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who?" She looked away at first, toward the flickering screen, then slowly back at me. Her expression gave everything away before her words could. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My hands were trembling slightly in my lap. I didn't know what scared me more, what I was feeling or the fact that I knew she felt it too. After what felt like a century trapped in that moment, she stood up. "I should go to bed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't wait for a response. Just turned and walked toward the hallway. I stayed frozen, my eyes still on the empty space she left behind, my chest heavy with everything I didn't say. My breath came uneven, and I realized I was clutching the fabric of my jeans so tight my knuckles had gone white that I wanted to tell myself this was just confusion. A crush, a phase, something harmless. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I'd never felt this particular kind of ache before. It wasn't just desire, it was need. Connection. Recognition. The way she looked at me made me feel real again, alive in ways I hadn't in years. I sat there long after the credits rolled, staring into nothing, my heart still racing. Something had been spoken without words tonight. Something dangerous. Something real. And there was no way to take it back. The rain began just after sunset, sudden and loud, hammering against the roof in sharp, steady bursts. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the drops race down the glass. The storm wasn't forecasted, and something about its surprise arrival made the house feel smaller, more enclosed. Emily had gone out to dinner with a few friends, leaving Ava and me alone again. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. We'd been alone before. Nothing had happened. But tonight didn't feel like the others. Tonight, the air felt electric, like the atmosphere knew something I didn't want to admit. Ava appeared quietly in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, hair still slightly damp from the shower. "Storm's kind of intense," she said, eyes flicking toward the window. I nodded, unable to stop looking at her. She sat down on the edge of the couch, hugging the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I've always hated thunder," she murmured, almost to herself. "Since I was a kid." I moved without thinking, grabbing another throw blanket and draping it over her lap. She looked up at me, surprised by the small kindness. "Thanks," she whispered. I sat beside her. Not too close. Not too far. Close enough to feel her presence but still pretend there was distance. Thunder cracked loudly overhead, and she jumped slightly, her arm brushing mine. I felt the contact like a jolt. Neither of us moved away. The room fell into a soft silence again, only the rain and occasional rumbles filling the space between us. After a moment, she shifted, resting her head gently on my shoulder. My body tensed, every nerve lit up. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just let her stay there. It felt wrong. It felt dangerous. But more than anything, it felt good. She sighed softly, her breath warm against my skin. "I wasn't talking about a boy," she said. Her voice was so low I almost missed it. I turned my head slowly to look at her. Her eyes were already on mine. "The other night," she added. "When I said I was falling for someone, I wasn't talking about a boy." My mouth was dry. My thoughts jumbled. My heart thudding so loud I could barely think. I swallowed hard, unable to pretend anymore. "I know," I said. The silence that followed was deep and heavy. Not uncomfortable, but weighty. As if something important was unfolding and neither of us wanted to break it. Her eyes didn't leave mine. She tilted her face slightly, her expression unsure but brave. I felt her breath before I felt her lips. The kiss was soft. Careful. Her mouth tasted faintly of peppermint and something sweeter. My eyes fluttered shut and for one long second, I kissed her back. No resistance. No thought. Just feeling, but then I pulled away. Too fast. Like touching fire. I stood up, breath shaky, heart racing. "This is wrong," I said, my voice barely audible. She stayed seated, looking up at me with wide, searching eyes. "Then why did it feel right?" she asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was a storm of guilt and longing and fear. I turned toward the hallway, not trusting myself to stay any longer in that room with her. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, chest heaving, hands trembling. I could still feel her lips on mine. Still hear her voice, soft and sure. The image of her sitting there, eyes full of hope and confusion, haunted me. I wanted her. God help me, I wanted her. But she was Emily's best friend. She was 19. I was supposed to know better. I was supposed to stop this before it started. But I hadn't. I let the kiss happen. I let it begin. And now, I didn't know how to undo it without breaking both of us in the process. The next morning, I moved through the house like a ghost. Every sound seemed louder than usual: running water, the soft clatter of dishes, even the distant hum of Emily's music behind her closed door. I avoided looking toward the guest room. I couldn't face her. Not after last night. My chest felt heavy, guilt pressing down so hard it was hard to breathe. I kept reminding myself that I was the adult, that I should have stopped it before it happened. But I didn't. I let it happen. I let her kiss me, and worse, I kissed her back. The shame of it wrapped around me like a second skin. I kept my head down as I passed the hallway, heart pounding at the thought of seeing her. Ava came into the kitchen just as I was rinsing out a coffee mug. Her steps were soft, hesitant. I could feel her watching me, but I didn't look up. I couldn't. "Morning," she said quietly. I mumbled something that barely sounded like a response and kept scrubbing at a mug that was already clean. She walked closer. "Are you okay?" Her voice was gentle, careful, and far too kind. I finally looked at her. She looked tired, eyes a little red, but there was something steady in her expression. "Yeah," I lied. "Just have a lot on my mind." She nodded slowly, though it was obvious neither of us believed what I said. The tension hung in the air like smoke. Every movement felt strained. When Emily came bounding into the room, oblivious and bright as always, the atmosphere shifted sharply. "Morning," she grinned, grabbing a granola bar and flopping onto a stool. "You two look like you haven't slept." I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "Just up late cleaning." Ava didn't say anything. She just smiled at Emily and looked down at her hands. I couldn't stop glancing between them, my daughter and the girl who had kissed me the night before. The weight of what I'd done sank deeper into my bones, the hours crawled. I avoided being alone with Ava. When she tried to catch my eye, I looked away. When she stood near me, I stepped back. I could feel the hurt radiating off her, but I didn't know what else to do. Every second I was near her, I was reminded of how wrong it all was. She didn't deserve the coldness I gave her, but I thought maybe if I pulled away hard enough, the feelings would go away. That the memory of her lips would fade. That I could pretend it never happened, but pretending was harder than I thought. I caught myself looking for her when she wasn't in the room. Listening for her laugh. Missing her, even while I was trying to push her away. That night, I passed by her room on the way to mine. The door was closed, but through the thin walls, I heard the faint sound of crying. Quiet, muffled, and heartbreakingly alone. I stood there, frozen, hand almost reaching for the doorknob. But I didn't knock. I turned and walked away, hating myself for I teed at in bed. I stared at the ceiling, sleepless, again. My mind kept replaying the kiss, the softness of it, the way she had looked at me like she saw the parts of me I tried to hide. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was her. I had been alone for so long. Too long. And for one moment, she had made me feel seen. Wanted. But I couldn't have her. Not like this. Not with everything at stake. I rolled over, curling into myself, as if shrinking could somehow erase the mess I had made. But it didn't. The guilt stayed. The ache stayed. And worse, the feeling I didn't want to name, it stayed too. She found me in the laundry room the next morning, standing in front of the dryer like I had forgotten what I was even doing there. My hands were buried in warm towels, but my mind was somewhere far away, tangled in thoughts I couldn't escape. I didn't hear her come in until she spoke. "Are you just going to keep pretending it didn't happen?" Her voice was calm but tight, like she had been holding it back too long. I turned slowly to face her. Ava stood in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, eyes steady and hurt all at once. I opened my mouth, unsure of what to say, unsure of what excuse I could possibly give her. She stepped forward, closing the space between us. "You kissed me back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't pretend I imagined that." I swallowed hard, chest tightening. "Ava. I'm your best friend's mom. You're 19. This isn't," I shook my head, unable to finish. "This isn't right." She stared at me for a long moment. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been replaying it over and over in my head, wondering what it means, if it means anything at all to you?" Her voice cracked slightly. But I know what I felt. And I know what I saw in your eyes. I stepped back, needing space I didn't deserve. I don't know what you saw, but it can't happen again, I said, more harshly than I meant to. Ava flinched, just slightly, and then nodded, her lips pressed tightly together. She turned without another word and walked out. I wanted to call her back, but I couldn't. My shame was louder than my desire, the rest of the day felt wrong. The house was too quiet. Emily had gone to run errands with her cousin, leaving me and Ava in this awkward silence that stretched through every room. I cleaned obsessively, scrubbing countertops that were already clean, folding clothes that didn't need folding. I kept hoping she'd come talk to me again, hoping she wouldn't. Every time I heard footsteps, my heart leapt and fell all at once. That evening, I walked into the kitchen and found her sitting at the table, arms wrapped around her knees, staring blankly at the wall. She didn't look at me. She didn't move. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know how to be the adult when I didn't feel in control of anything. I turned away, walking toward the back door, and she spoke softly behind me. I'm not a child, Lauren. I froze. She continued, still not looking up. You keep pushing me away like I'm too young to know what I feel. But I do. I know this is complicated. I know it's not easy. But that doesn't make it less real. I turned around slowly. I'm not pushing you away because I think your feelings aren't real. I'm doing it because mine are. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her head lifted, eyes finally meeting mine. There was a silence between us again, but it wasn't like before. This one was full of things we both understood now. I felt my chest rise and fall too quickly, my heart thudding in my ears. She didn't say anything. Just stood up, walked past me, and disappeared down the hallway. Emily came home an hour later, her smile as bright as ever, completely unaware of the storm I was standing in. She hugged me, chatted about her afternoon, and I smiled through it all, nodding, pretending to listen. But all I could think about was Ava, sitting somewhere in this house, hurt and confused and trying to make sense of a feeling I didn't have the courage to name out loud. That night, I heard her door close softly. I stepped out of my room just in time to see her suitcase by the stairs. My stomach dropped. She was leaving. She must have called someone to pick her up. I stood frozen in the hallway, not knowing if I should stop her or let her go. And then she walked past me, eyes red but dry. She didn't say anything. I didn't either. She opened the front door and disappeared into the night. I stood there long after the sound of the car faded, my hands trembling, my heart sinking under the weight of everything I never said. The house was too quiet without her. The kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful, it felt hollow. I moved through the days on autopilot, going through the motions of cooking, cleaning, and pretending. Emily noticed something was off, but she didn't press me. Not at first. She asked where Ava had gone, and I told her she left early, said she needed to get back to campus. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. The truth was that she left because of me. Because I pushed her away, because I couldn't let myself feel what I felt without also drowning in shame. I told myself it was for the best, that she would move on, forget me, find someone her own age, someone who wouldn't destroy the trust between her and my daughter. But the empty feeling in my chest didn't go away. It only grew heavier that I started to find her everywhere. In the corner of the kitchen where she'd stand barefoot in the mornings. In the way sunlight hit the dining room table just like it did the day she sat there in silence. In the quiet moments, I heard her laugh in my head and hated how badly I missed it. I tried to distract myself with work, with errands, with long drives and podcasts I didn't really listen to. But it didn't help. Nothing helped. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was tucked between a credit card offer and a local flyer, written in handwriting I recognized immediately. My hands shook as I opened it, sitting down before I even finished unfolding the page. Her words were honest. Raw. She told me she wasn't angry, just hurt. She hadn't meant to fall for me, but it had happened. She tried to ignore it, tried to bury it, but it only grew. You looked at me like I mattered, she wrote. Like I wasn't too broken. Like you saw something good in me. And I don't get that from people, Lauren. Not the way I got it from you. I read the letter 3 times before I let myself cry. That night, I sat alone in the dark, holding the paper in my lap like it could answer all the questions clawing at me. I had told myself it was wrong. That it couldn't work. But I had never stopped to ask if it shouldn't just because it was hard. Maybe love wasn't about what made sense. Maybe it was about what made you feel seen. Alive. Real. The next morning, I called her. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I tried again in the afternoon. No answer. By the evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove without thinking, heart pounding with every turn. The college campus was just an hour away, but every minute stretched into 1,000. I didn't know what I'd say. I didn't even know if she'd want to see me. But I had to try. When I arrived, I parked near a cluster of dorm buildings and walked until I found the one she had mentioned before. My palms were sweating. My legs felt unsteady. I found the right door and knocked, waiting, breath held like I was underwater. A minute passed. Then another. I was about to turn around when it opened. She looked stunned at first, her mouth parting slightly, her hair pulled back, a hoodie hanging off one shoulder. Her eyes searched my face. "Why are you here?" she asked quietly. I stepped closer, voice trembling. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because I read your letter. Because I couldn't pretend anymore that this didn't matter." She stared at me, lips pressing together like she was holding in something fragile. "You left," she whispered. "You told me it was wrong." I nodded. "I did. And maybe it is. Maybe it's messy and complicated and hard. But I also know I've never felt something like this. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I just had the courage to feel it." She didn't speak. She didn't move. But something in her eyes softened. The silence between us wasn't angry or confused anymore. It felt like possibility. Like maybe, despite everything, we weren't done. Not yet. We walked around campus slowly, not saying much at first. The autumn air was crisp, and leaves crunched under our feet with every step. I kept glancing at her, waiting for her to say something, anything, that would let me know where her heart stood. Ava kept her arms wrapped around herself, her face unreadable, and for a moment I wondered if I had made a mistake by coming. But then she spoke, her voice quiet. "I told myself I'd forget you." I looked at her, my chest tightening. Did it work? She stopped walking, turned toward me, and met my eyes. Not even a little. Her voice cracked at the end, and that small break undid every wall I had tried to keep standing inside me. I took a step closer, slowly, giving her the chance to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "I don't know what it's supposed to look like. But I know I feel more alive when I'm around you. I know I care about you in a way that scares me." Ava nodded slowly, her eyes wet. "It scares me too." We sat down on a bench nearby. She reached for my hand, fingers trembling, and I let her take it. The warmth of her skin made something in me settle, like my body was finally catching up to what my heart had already decided. "What about Emily?" she asked after a while, her voice fragile. That question had been pounding in the back of my mind for days. I squeezed her hand gently. "I'll tell her the truth. Carefully. Honestly. She deserves that. She deserves to know what's happening, even if she doesn't like it. I won't lie to her. Ava looked down. She'll hate me. I shook my head. She won't. She might be shocked. She might be angry. But she loves you. She's always seen you as part of her family. And maybe someday, she'll understand why I couldn't walk away from this. A week later, I sat across from Emily at the kitchen table. My heart raced, palms sweaty, as I told her everything. I didn't go into details. I just told her the truth. I had feelings for Ava, that it wasn't planned, that I hadn't meant for it to happen, but it did. Her expression changed slowly, from confusion to disbelief, then silence. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at me like she was trying to figure out who I was. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I don't know how to feel about this. I nodded. I know. And I'll give you space. I just wanted you to hear it from me. She got up and left the room without saying another word. I didn't follow her. I just sat there, staring at the same spot on the table where Ava had once left her coffee cup that it took time. Weeks passed before Emily began talking to me again like before. She didn't ask questions, but she didn't shut me out completely either. And I could see something shifting, slowly. The silence became less cold. The looks became less distant. One evening, out of nowhere, she said, "Ava's not a bad person." I looked at her, heart suddenly in my throat. No. She's not. Emily didn't say more, but it was enough. It was her way of saying she was trying. Months later, Ava and I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun sink behind the trees. Our fingers were intertwined, our legs tucked under a blanket, the kind of stillness between us that felt earned. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I never thought we'd get here." I kissed the top of her head gently. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never expect. They find us when we're too tired to keep looking. She smiled against my shoulder, and in that moment, I knew we had survived something. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect story, but something real, something worth fighting for. And if you've ever loved someone when you weren't supposed to, if you've ever felt your heart pull in a direction your mind told you to resist, then maybe you understand this story more than you want to admit. Maybe, just maybe, you know that love, when it's real, doesn't always follow the rules. It breaks them. And sometimes, that's exactly how it saves you. If this story found its way into your heart, don't forget to follow for more. Because love, real, complicated, unapologetic love, deserves to be told, again and again. If this story made your heart ache or your mind wander, don't scroll away. Subscribe now for more deep, emotional stories that challenge the rules and dive into the parts of love no one talks about. Hit the like button if you've ever felt something you couldn't explain, and share this story with someone who believes love isn't always simple, but always worth it.